Stephen A., yesterday you said if the Clippers won the title without Kawhi Leonard, they should move on from him. Clearly, that mission not accomplished. Paul George, meanwhile, had some big games in this series, but last night, Game 6, not one of them. He was 6 of 15 shooting and minus 25. How do you feel about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George today?
Well, you got to keep him. You got to keep Kawhi Leonard now. I mean, averaging 30 on 57% shooting from the field before he went down at the tail end of Game 4 in the Western Conference semis against Utah. And you see what happened after that. The Clippers were like 15, I don't know what their record was since that moment in time, but, they were like 15 and 13 with him without this season. And obviously they won their share of playoff games, but in the end, they won 2 playoff games to close out Utah. They won the final 3, and then obviously they won 2 games in this series. But in the end, there was just something missing. And, listen, Paul George did not choke. Paul George is not a scrub. Paul George is a star in this league. But there's levels. And there's a level that he just wasn't on. He was on it in Game 5, but you got to continue that on. And if you had lost last night with Paul George showing out, but they just had to succumb to Chris Paul, that would have been different. They got beat down by the Phoenix Suns last night. Phoenix Suns ran them out of their own building. So Paul George, the star, had that one game, which was Game 5, where he was lights out. And not to say he didn't have other good games this postseason where he scored over 30, like 3 or 4 straight games. But what you did in Game 5, when you had a 3-1 deficit and was on the brink of elimination in Phoenix, there was no reason why you should not have been able to do that at the Staples Center. You could call it fatigue, might have been tired, might have been a lot of things. He's been logging a lot of minutes, and I totally understand that. But you got to find a way to gumption up whatever's inside of you to put forth a better performance than he put forth last night. He came up small last night, not embarrassingly small like they did in Game 7 against Denver last year or anything like that. But you found yourself expecting a lot more and a lot better from Paul George, and that's not what happened. And you did walk away feeling like if Kawhi Leonard was there, there's no way the Phoenix Suns would be in the finals. The Clippers would have been in the finals based on everything else you saw. As a matter of fact, they'd probably win it based on the plethora of injuries that have taken place throughout the rest of the playoffs. But Kawhi did go down, and it was up to Paul George to step up and get it done. He got it done in Game 5, didn't get it done in Game 6, came up considerably smaller than we had expected, and that's a big reason why the Clippers are home today.
If Kawhi doesn't get hurt, the Clippers advance, period. But today, I'm not going to criticize Paul George. I've been critical about his playoff performances in the past, Stephen A. Not today. Because I don't care that he's less efficient in the playoffs than he normally is. It's not that I don't care. It's that the playoff defenses are better. The question is, did he play well or not? And the answer is yes. He's a two-way player. If his offense is off one game,
you're talking overall or last night?
Overall in these playoffs. Okay. If his offense is off, he can help you defensively. Chris Paul was excellent in these playoffs, and this is a big piece of evidence that doesn't erase what's happened in the past, but it counterbalances it. Just like you can't ignore what's happened in the past, you can't ignore this. And let me tell you something. I give LeBron enormous credit. Enormous credit in 2015 for taking a team without his second or third best players to Game 6 against the Warriors, who won the championship. I give Kevin Durant enormous credit in these playoffs for taking that Bucks team to a Game 7 with a chance to win it, in overtime with that shot where he airballed the 3, but he deserves credit for getting there. Now, I'd like to point out they were up 2-0, which means after he lost his help, they lost 4 out of 5, right? Nevertheless, he deserves credit, just like Paul George does, for getting this team to a Game 6 without Kawhi Leonard. Like, it's even harder to do what Paul George did because he's not missing the second best player on the team. He's missing the best player on the team, and largely because of his play, they were able to get to a Game 6 against a team. Look, Chris Paul missed a couple games. Devin Booker had his face broken, everything, but they had their guys together in the end, and Paul George did not.
I'm not going to accuse you of not answering the question, but you go through that long soliloquy.
Who had a long soliloquy?
And just ignored Game 6. What I'm trying to say is this. Paul George, Paul George performed well throughout these playoffs, but he didn't last night.
Yeah,
would
I
have
think
sufficed.
he had 21, 9, and 2.
The man did 6 for 15 in the midst of CP3 putting on that show. Yeah. The one person you were looking for an answer from didn't give it to you in that one game. It doesn't erase everything else he's done. But that one game, which was the closeout game, Max, he showed up for the closeout game in Game 5. Didn't show up for the closeout game in Game 6.
All right, big-time
He
players.
did not show up. He
Big-time
didn't have
plays,
his best
big-time
game.
moments. Guys, we got to keep
Okay.
it pushing here.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.